This is another streaming, trying to do another streaming in English. Although I, I think I will be alone this time, so I don't think I will speak much. Wait. Okay. So what I'm doing, I have a series of versions of Monster Hunter creatures as Monster Girls. So with some of them, I do like reference to anime characters or video game characters, and I'm doing the monster Chameleos. Chameleos is this one, and he can make himself invisible. It's his ability. So I'm making a reference to Quiet on the Metal Gear games. Okay, let's see. I don't really play the Metal Gear games. I don't like them, but I think the reference is gonna be well known. So I will try to make the physical characteristics of the monster into somehow the the clothes of Quiet. I think I have never fought against Chameleos myself. I think he's from the Monster Hunter 3 from Wii U, and I don't have that game. I have the I have the ones from PSP. I have the 3U from 3DS and the 4U. Nice, nice. And I don't know if he's in the 4U. I have reached to, I think I am G3 rank, so I'm not sure if he appears later. it is complicated to think how to do the monster with quiet clothes. I was watching the the Sarkisian effect. I have only watched 45 minutes, and it, I don't know. I think the editing is very bad. It's too soon to say if the documental is good or bad in the things it says, but the editing is bad. The sound, the music is louder than the people speaking. I watched the South Park episode too. It's, it's interesting. I don't know if people who's not into the cultural war will understand why they are saying all that stuff. maybe I will keep hearing the Sarkisian effect as background, and maybe that way I will have something to say, because I don't know, I don't have many to say right now.
Where was it? Utah State. I have a mug from there. I'll show you before you leave. Where I spoke at Utah State, and it was a hostile situation as well. But just set up magnetometers and check everybody for guns and so forth. I think is just a little overdone. So I think Anita, you need to be careful about charges of self-promotion and hyping and talking around the edges of the real problem. I wouldn't be too concerned about the death threats. I probably have 10 times or 100 times as many as you have. My experience is the people who threaten to kill you don't kill you. The ones who don't threaten to kill you do kill you. And or more likely are going to kill you. So the death threats, I was always glad to get, because I figured that was the only expression that that individual was going to make in my direction. But she's sort of in this miasmic, I don't think this ought to be done because this changes attitudes. Then it doesn't make somebody want to march to war. But she received an award from somebody. I don't think I would have received except an award from somebody in the video game industry. Famously, Charles Lindbergh received an award from the Third Reich, from Hitler, and that kind of cut the legs off his credibility in the America First movement. Not to compare the video game industry to the Third Reich, but I think the point is when you start receiving awards, and I watched her acceptance of it, it was kind of over the top, sort of giggling. I think you undercut your credibility as a critic. But one of the problems that I sense Anita Sarkeesian has is she's trying too hard to be liked. You can't really do this work like I've done and others have done, and have any fiber in any molecule that wants approval for you as a person. I sense, maybe I'm wrong, but I sense that about her. You got to give up on the notion of being popular or get awards from the industry or at the end of the day be liked about this, because if you're going to be a warrior on something, your job is to wage war and not to win the hearts of your opponents. She's, so I just get a feel watching her that it upsets her if she's not liked. Somebody once said there's nothing more thrilling than being shot at and have a bullet whiz by and miss you. So to me, that was the feeling I got. But you can't. Certain people are going to be your enemies. You can't try and persuade them not to be.
Jack Thompson left us with a lot to think about. While we didn't agree with all of his claims about the effects of games or his methods, it was clear that his campaign had a concise and definite goal that respected constitutional law, while Anita seemed hell-bent on reshaping the whole of gaming culture in her image. Most remarkable, however, was hearing that Thompson shared our thoughts on Anita's unorthodox methods of self-promotion. But Anita wasn't alone. Professional victimhood was quickly becoming a cottage industry among social justice warrior feminists.
I think uh, they throw the social justice warrior thing in the documental, but they don't really explain what it is. So I if they are going to use that term through all the documentary, people probably will not understand half of what they say.
Anita wasn't the only woman getting torrents of hate online. There seemed to be a new explosion of women receiving hateful comments, one of the earliest examples of which was Rebecca Watson. In 2011, Rebecca Watson spoke at an atheist convention on the topic of misogyny and sexism in the atheist community. Later that night, she had an unnerving experience.
At the bar later that night, actually at 4 in the morning, we were at the hotel bar. 4 a.m. I said, I've had enough, guys. I'm exhausted. Go into bed. So I walked to the elevator, and a man got on the elevator with me and said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but I find you very interesting, and I would like to talk more. Would you like to come to my hotel room for coffee?" Just a word to the wise here, guys. Don't do that. I don't really know how else to explain how this makes me incredibly uncomfortable, but I'll just sort of lay it out that I was a single woman, in a foreign country at 4 a.m. in a hotel elevator with you, just you, and I don't invite you back to your hotel room right after I finished talking about how it creeps me out and makes me uncomfortable.
A feminist in the atheist community hung out in the bar till 4 o'clock in the morning. And then when she went back to her room, she was propositioned for coffee in an elevator, which if you're being propositioned in an elevator at 4 in the morning for coffee, I think we're all aware of what code we're talking about. But fundamentally, that was it. That's where it finished. She said no, and that was it. And the next day, she sort of comes out how this just proves her point about how sexist atheist conferences are. Now, there are two problems with this. First of all, it's not even known if the person who asked her out for coffee was even an atheist, or whether he's even at the conference, or he was just someone who happened to be at the bar till 4 in the morning. And I think, it's one of those things that if people are actually hanging out in a bar till 4 in the morning, this is sort of the arena where people do tend to proposition each other. It is the sort of environment where you expect that to happen. But she claimed that this was actually something that men just shouldn't do. Now, what in reality that's doing is it's saying that men must be mind readers. If this guy who propositioned her in the elevator had been the man of her dreams and they'd gone off into the sunset together, we would never have heard about any of this. But it turns out that wasn't what he wasn't the man of her dreams, and it never happened. And so this was now offensive. This was something that men shouldn't do. Guys don't do that. And the thing that really grates with most people when she generalizes that all guys shouldn't hit on girls is that actually, this is sort of how boys and girls get together, is someone's got to ask the other one out to begin with, and if they say, no, I'm not interested, and then chastise the entire opposite sex for getting it wrong, then, this is just it's an impossibly entitled position for someone to be in, that, no, I only want people to hit on me who I like. It's an unrealistic expectation. And so she basically transformed this whole thing into how sexist the atheist community was, when in reality no one even knew if it was an atheist who actually asked her out in the first place. And even if he had, so what? I mean, the girl gets hit on at 4 o'clock in the morning in a bar, and that's the graphic example that shows how the atheist community is sexist.
But as someone who did grow up on the wrong side of the tracks and endured tremendous violence very young, it's hard to empathize with somebody who feels traumatized by a word, by being asked to come up for coffee. I was in fucking prison. I've survived brain surgery and extreme violence and public crucifixion. Fuck you all. You have no idea what it's like. So that's why it's hard to empathize.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also know, I've said this many times, I would know not to fly to Zimbabwe and see some guy with his limbs falling off and say, my boss was really a jerk off today.
Rebecca Watson had taken an awkward misunderstanding and claimed that it was indicative of the sexual misconduct of an entire group of people. She was mocked on the internet as a result. Then there was Melody Hensley, who claimed that nasty comments on Twitter had given her post-traumatic stress disorder. She then stated that she would lodge complaints with the commanding officers of any soldier who challenged that assertion.
That's just nonsense. Like, I don't know how. I mean, if you're that, you should never leave your house or talk to anyone if you are that unable to handle how people act online or elsewhere. If you're taking threats online that seriously, that you think you're getting PTSD, that you can compare your experience of that to someone who actually has PTSD. I'm probably one of the few men in my family who didn't go to the military. My father did, both my grandparents did, all of my father's brothers did. My younger brother did, my youngest brother went into the military. He was over in Afghanistan. And, I know a real PTSD actually looks like. I know how many drugs they had him on when he came back, with antipsychotics and all that kind of stuff. How messed up he was. So to see people claim PTSD over internet threats is ridiculous.
Or there was Chanty Binks, who took part in a mob disruption of a men's conference and acted insulted when people didn't want to hear what she had to say.
MRAs should be, if you shut the fuck up and let me read my list, there's the fucking proof.
So I obviously can't
So, number one, shut the fuck up for a second. Feminists do not want you to lose custody of your children. The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy. We're working on it, and you guys are trying to dismantle it. But if you fucking listen, can you shut the fuck up for a second too? Now, if you would shut the fuck up for the 50th millionth time, bullshit, you hate sexism, but you're an MRA. Okay, no, point taken. We win. Sorry. Oh, my friend. Somebody doesn't want to hear what we're actually here for, so you just want to not act like just actually shut the fuck up. Your website. I'm reading the face. I'm trying to fucking, I'm letting everybody else hear it, okay? Not just for you, Mr. Entitled. You're both noticing a theme. Patriarchy. Anyway, I'm not done.
In 2013, self-proclaimed tech evangelist Adria Richards was attending PyCon, a convention built around the Python programming language. While listening to a presentation, she overheard two men telling off-color jokes. Richards decided that rather than ask the men to stop, she would snap their picture and post it to her Twitter, which resulted in one of the men, a father of three, losing his job. Richards was fired as well, but lionized as a hero in the media by writers such as Deanna Zant, a friend of Richards.
As soon as somebody who was born a white male says something out loud, they're accused of being a misogynist, and all the other women jump on that and say, absolutely, yes, he's a misogynist, and that's why he's saying that. I've said from the beginning, a lot of these women who claim that misogyny is active in STEM environments don't realize that I worked in STEM.
Yeah.
There were times that I failed on my projects. When I failed, it was the result of my failure. It was the result of my ineptitude. It had nothing to do with being female.
Yeah.
Now, these women who see misogyny everywhere, when they fail, they say, oh, it's misogyny that led me to failure. Well, no, I've been a shit engineer. I've been a good engineer too, depending on what project I was on.
Yeah.
These people are unable to divorce their actions from who they are. They say, well, when people hate me, they're misogynistic. No, people hate you because you're being a bitch.
Yeah.
Big fucking difference.
Most ominous of all, however, was Stephanie Guthrie.
Last summer, misogynists were engaged in a virulent hate campaign against Anita Sarkeesian. They besieged her YouTube and Kickstarter pages with misogynist and anti-Semitic comments. They vandalized her Wikipedia page. They drew and photoshopped her into some truly disgusting, violent, pornographic scenes. And worst of all, one man in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, built a video game inviting players to click on a close-up photo of Anita's face and watch bruises and contusions appear. I mean, what is it about the internet that encouraged this guy to publish this game and to put that out there? I'm also talking about a lack of social consequences, like maybe facing a torrent of criticism for your garbage behavior. And in the case of the beat-up Anita Sarkeesian game, it was one thing I couldn't allow to stand. I confronted him with this tweet. The tweet intentionally drew a parallel between his online and offline selves by asking if the game represented his actions IRL, or in real life, if you don't use the internet as much as I do. In another tweet, I suggested employers might just find his game objectionable and notified the Twitter account of his local newspaper. The conversation caught fire, and within an hour, hundreds of Twitter users were participating in some capacity. When I documented the confrontation and Bendelin's response the next morning, the post spread like wildfire, drawing thousands more into the discussion. On a massive scale, people were demonstrating where they stood on the matter, and in doing so, they were drawing new lines in the sand of our social interaction.
A fellow alumnus of York University, Anita's alma mater, Guthrie was a similarly minded feminist political activist. When Bendelin Spur published his beat-up Anita Sarkeesian game, Guthrie responded with a cyber mob of her own. But Guthrie's orchestrated attack on Spur wasn't the most heinous of her actions. She reached a new level of infamy when she brought inexplicable charges of online harassment against Gregory Allen Elliott. Initially a colleague of Guthrie's, she and Allen had a falling out over her plan to cybermob Bendelin Spur. A graphic artist and father of four, Elliott lost his job following Guthrie's charges. But most perplexing of all was that Elliott had never threatened or propositioned Guthrie. Instead, she felt harassed that he had written about her. Tim Meehan is a legal researcher and former member of Guthrie's inner circle. Meehan recalled Guthrie as a cold and calculating political opportunist, far from the doe-eyed innocent of Guthrie's public persona. In the interest of full disclosure, Tim Meehan was a donor to the funding of this documentary.
I first met Steph in May of 2012.
Okay.
You know, I do have a bit of a social conscience, so I thought, hey, you know, she's getting this group together with a bunch of local women to try to promote women in politics, and hey, you know, what's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
She seemed to be a leader. She seemed to step up and start conversations and organize. She seemed to be very good at organizing. And I thought, okay, you know, this is a smart woman. She's, you know, she's got a good head on her shoulders. She's, you know, she knows people. She's very well connected with the Toronto media.
Tim told us about his personal falling out with Guthrie, which set the tone for what lay ahead.
I can tell you, I was watching the closing ceremonies of the London Olympics, and I had my BlackBerry, and one of her friends, a woman named Rachel McKenzie, Rachel Mack, had posted something. I can't even remember if it was regarding Greg Elliott or something else, but I just said to her, it's like, you know, you're kind of feeding the troll here. Maybe you shouldn't feed the troll. Ignore these guys. They're just out to get a rise from you. And then Rachel got all upset at me. She's like, you're silencing me. You're doing this. And I said, no, I don't intend that at all. And then Stephanie sent me a tweet saying, oh, you know, stop mansplaining, a term that I think is one of the most sexist terms ever. I remember I was trying to be reasonable with Steph, and I do remember at one point she just started typing in all caps, please respect my need to end this conversation, and just rage quit and left. And then what I tried to do at this point, I thought, okay, I went over to my Facebook, because she was friends with me on Facebook, and I thought, okay, I'll send you I'll talk to her in private. She had already defriended me within seconds. So at that point, I was like, oh, are they serious about having a discussion, or am I now not doctrinally pure enough to be friends with them? And it turned out to be the latter. Of course, they took the whole opposite. Oh, I'm condescending, and oh, I'm telling them what to do. Listen, I was just using the fact that I've been online longer than some of them have been alive, and I've seen this before, and I know what trolls look like. I was just saying, listen, don't get worked up about this. Just ignore it. So that didn't work, obviously. My former friend Emily, in fact, got together with Pope Shaky James Edgar, brought me to a park, and tried to say, you've got a problem and this and that. You've got mental issues. You've got anger issues. They brought me down to Cam H, saying that, obviously I have mental issues. So I went in there. I talked to somebody, and they were like, well, the first guy I talked to said, here's a prescription. Then I went back. Second guy I talked to said, so wait a minute. You're telling me that they said that you have mental issues because you got angry because you were insulted? I said, pretty much. He said, I think they're manipulating you, and I think you need some better friends. Wow. And it was like, oh, okay, so I'm not crazy.
Yeah. Do you feel like, or did you feel like when you were pushed into therapy, that was maybe something intentionally to discredit you? Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And that's why that's what contributed to the end of my friendship with Emily Mooney.
Okay.
Which I used to look after their house. We first met on a Usenet group back in 1996 called alt.society.generation X.
Mm-hmm.
And they were local, her and her boyfriend at the time, her now husband. And I mean, they were very close. I was very close to them, their daughter. It was one of my best friendships, and all of a sudden, it sort of blew up because of these people.
Guthrie's tightly knit group of activists were given to playing the same dissent as harassment card that Anita Sarkeesian favored. Tim told us about his association with Guthrie during the time she began planning to make an example of Gregory Allen Elliott.
And this is the funny part. Stephanie had been expressing concern about, because there was Greg Elliott, there's another guy named Sattva, there was another guy, Drunk Superman, there was a couple of Twitter guys in the Toronto scene who supported Rob Ford ostensibly. I don't know if they could have been just trolling to get a rise out of people.
Yeah.
But, she was, these people, they're saying these. I said, look, just document everything. I said, document. I said, if he is the bad person, you say, eventually he'll slip up and give a violent threat. Then you can go to police, uttering death threats. Ding, there you go.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's what I thought. I thought, okay, maybe he'll go a little too far. But I said to him, really? Just ignore him. Mm-hmm. Which, I thought she had blocked him. But again, she went searching for stuff and it would pop up. This is what I think what the trial is about. Even though she had blocked him, she would go searching on the T.O. Poly hashtag and his tweets would pop up. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, you went looking for it. You saw it. Okay, Greg Elliott was a prolific Twitterer on the T.O. Poly hashtag, Toronto politics. Mostly he was a Rob Ford supporter. Generally, I guess you would put him in the pigeonhole of being right-wing, although he's also a graphic artist. He would also do public art installations, put signs up. He would rearrange rocks at the beach. He was more of harmless comes to mind when I think of him. He does not seem to be somebody who would be stalking. Although he could be a little bit lippy on Twitter, as I can be, as anyone can be. And I did, a few times, I heard complaints from people saying, he's sending me these really, inappropriate tweets and stuff. But no one really seemed to come out with the evidence of it. There would always be rumors like, he's such a creepy guy. But when never, oh, what did he do? Oh, well, he asked me out for coffee. So, I stopped associating with the Guthrie Scooby crowd in August of 2012. And then all of a sudden, I think in November, he got arrested. And right out of the starting gate, Steph Guthrie's tweeting, "Oh, anybody who thinks that I did this to make a point, no, I'm really scared." And then 2 weeks later, at his second court appearance, Paisley Ray, who works for the Toronto Police, and her other friend, Heather Riley, made a complaint, and then the charges were added to him. I wrote a letter to the Law Society of Upper Canada complaining about the fact that the prosecutor is putting this forward. I don't think there's any reasonable chance of conviction, and I also don't think that this case is in the public interest.
Yeah.
The Law Society said, well, she's a Crown attorney, so we have no jurisdiction. So then I took that response, wrote my letter to Mr. Justice Kazan, and I didn't even think, I remember thinking, all I have is hearsay evidence. I mean, I've seen this. I can't really say anything to the police. I can't really say anything, but, as an amicus curiae, as a law student, I have a duty to be a friend of the court, to inform them at least of this.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote the letter. And I was surprised as anybody when I picked up the newspaper a few weeks later, saying that the trial was stopped, because they took it seriously.
Good.
I was actually in shock. I thought, they'll figure this some crank's writing. They'll just put it in the garbage. But I guess they looked it up and they saw, okay, he's a law student. Oh, maybe he's actually serious about this, which I was.
Yeah.
So, and the funny part was that aside from a visit I got from my local police when I was back in New Brunswick, asking me to call some detective on the Toronto Police who worked in the same division where these charges were brought up, I have had zero contact. I've had zero letters, nothing in writing whatsoever. No, and I expected them to contact me in order to, at the very least, give a statement. Maybe give a statement, go to a notary, and send it off. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There was two things. There was a party in July at the Emmett Ray, which is a bar on College Street West in Toronto, hipster central.
Yeah.
That's where 90% of these people, they live within a 2-block radius. It's kind of like Williamsburg over in Brooklyn. It's the trendy area now in Toronto, or it was when I lived there. And Paisley Ray was there, Steph Guthrie, she was the queen, the life of the party, the reason they were having the party, because she was so brave and fighting off the misogyny when she pointed out Bendelin's beat-up game, so they had this get-together. So, Heather Riley was there, a lot of other people. This other one, Astrid Idlewild, A. Kazaglia, I think is her Twitter name. B. Humey, Guitar Drone, David Demchuk from the CBC, who he's a very angry person. So all these people are there, and they were just sitting around, and I made a joke. I said, everyone's here except Greg Elliott, and everybody I brought the house down. They were just laughing. They didn't see this as anything scary at all. Oh, he's just some annoying guy on the internet. And then I remember Steph was like, we're going to take care of him, and I thought, I didn't really think anything of it. Until the day that Emily Mooney and James Edgar pulled me aside in the park to say, you've got a problem, you need to get psychiatric counseling, etc., blah, 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 blah. And then James Edgar mentioned me, by the way, yes, we're working in the background to nail this Elliott. We have friends in the Crown Attorney's office. Demchuk is working his stuff. There was a meeting that Greg Elliott's lawyer brought up. I was not at that meeting, But he told me about this meeting where they said, yeah, we're basically going to sit down to plot and see how we can get this guy. And, and I thought, well, everybody's connected, but I never really thought anything of it until he's charged with criminal harassment, breach of an undertaking, because, well, I had watched on people on Twitter, and Emily Mooney wanted to meet me after her work. She worked at an English school on Eglinton Avenue West, so she said, let's go, I haven't seen you in a while, let's go out and have a coffee or whatever. So I show up, and all of a sudden, James Edgar's there, who I was not told that he would be coming. So I was a little put off by that to begin with. And then, but he started saying this, oh, well, you don't understand, the whole Sarkeesian thing, like, oh, if you don't think you're affected, that means you're probably really affected. This whole pseudo garbage, he started this. He was sort of the ringleader more than Emily. I think Emily was sort of like doing this.
And he brought up the third person.
And he brought up the fact that, yes, we have him and Demchuk had this meeting. He has friends in the Crown's office. We're going to see what we can do about this guy. And he said, Tim, don't worry. There's stuff in the background. There's back channels being taken care of that we're going to take care of this situation.
The verdict for Gregory Allen Elliott is expected in October of 2015. If convicted, Elliott could face 6 months in prison, but the case could establish a dangerous precedent, one where public figures could shut down voices that spoke out against them, even if nothing criminal was actually said. All of these women, and more like them, had certainly received hateful comments from the internet with varying degrees of malice, but contrary to how they were portrayed in the media, they were hardly innocent geek girls that just wanted to enjoy the internet. They were maniacal, mean-spirited, malicious thugs that attacked their chosen targets without mercy, then switched on their victim persona when it suited them. And worse, many were making a handsome living at it.
Eventually, you just come to the understanding that this isn't going to go away. Unless someone actually addresses these issues, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, which it did. There is one game that they play, and that's if someone is a victim, it is very natural for people to be sympathetic to those victims, and quite right too. The problem comes is, what do you do when you have someone who is essentially doing that as a profession, someone whose reason for being has essentially come to be to cry wolf? And that's where we really are with a lot of these feminists. I mean, if there are real victims out there, they absolutely deserve the sympathy. But if you have someone who is crying wolf again and again and again, there is only so long that you can go on before these people start undermining the credibility of real victims, and before you can actually just sort of say, look, you're crying wolf. You are not being persecuted there. This is the very seductive thing about the victimhood narrative, is to the impartial third person, it is instantly credible. That if you come across someone who is claiming that they're a victim, there are two possibilities. They either genuinely are a victim, they're genuinely being persecuted for who they are, or that they're a liar. And most people will will give you the benefit of the doubt. And so there is this, people who know nothing about this whatsoever are naturally inclined to be on the side of the victim, which means that, if you like, the playing field is automatically biased in favor of the professional victim. So it's a sort of double-edged thing. You know, if you're going to be a professional victim to random third parties who don't know that crying wolf is the name of the game, they will tend to believe you. And I think this is one of the reasons why Gamergate did so well. And the second thing, like I was saying, is he requires no talent whatsoever. All you've got to do to be a victim is be a female-bodied person in some cases.
It's just crazy. This is the princess and the pea syndrome.
Yeah.
What's the word? Microaggressions?
Yes.
Do microaggressions exist in sub-Saharan Africa?
On August 16, 2014, a jilted young man named Iran Joni published a scandalous blog about his former girlfriend, game developer and social justice advocate Zoe Quinn. In the course of Iran's lengthy commentary, it was revealed that during what he believed was a monogamous relationship, Quinn had actually cheated on him with 5 different men, including her boss, Joshua Boggs, as well as prominent games journalist Nathan Grayson and developer Robin Arnott. The internet exploded with outrage, as it always does when public figures are caught in sex scandals. But in this case, many gamers saw it as the final hypocritical straw in what had been a long series of slights from the obnoxious, self-aggrandizing gaming press. The controversy had a number of names, from the burgers and fries scandal to the Quinspiracy. But it was an offhanded tweet from actor Adam Baldwin that once and for all gave it the name Gamergate. Zoe Quinn's associates in the social justice gaming press were quick to come to her defense, calling Gamergate an act of slut-shaming and misogynistic cyberbullying. But ultimately, Zoe Quinn was an afterthought compared to Nathan Grayson and his ever-mounting list of undisclosed ethical lapses that included financial support and positive press coverage of close friends and personal associates, Zoe Quinn outstanding among them. Like Anita before her, Zoe claimed to be the subject of an ongoing cyber mob of sexist harassment, and like Anita Sarkeesian, the claims were outlandish and difficult to verify. She claimed to have been doxxed, which is the practice of revealing a victim's personal information to the internet at large. Speaking about her ordeal to Congress, Quinn claimed that Gamergate supporters had sent a private investigator to her house, but in reality, the investigator had been sent on behalf of attorney Mike Cernovich, who was attempting to locate Zoe and have her served with process papers after she had doxed him. Other claims abounded.
I don't care about Zoe Quinn. I mean, she's an indie developer of a game. She's not in my ecosystem, so to speak. But one day I get up, and it turns out that she had put together a bunch of images that gave you an impression that some cartoonist had made a disgusting cartoon about her, and then she placed an image of me of me telling the artist, we're hiring. The United States, we're hiring. Yeah. And the implication was that he wrote this, he made this really ugly cartoon. And I went, hey, come to Stardock. We're hiring. We want your kind here. Which is not the case, because in reality, the cartoon had been apparently made in August. Yeah. He had deleted it, so no one had seen it. I mean, Zoe Quinn is the one who actually publicized the cartoon. Yeah. So I had never seen it before. I don't think hardly anyone had seen it. And then Jim Sterling. Yeah, he did. He retweeted it, and a few other people retweeted it. And I was like, oh my! All these people are like, oh, I'm never buying anything from Star. Like, oh. So I responded like, you're full of crap. You're lying. Quit lying about us. Yeah. This has nothing to do with anything. My tweet to him was from November. Yeah. And he asked for a job. Well, I asked for a lot of jobs. And then I was able to pull off the same. Luckily, she hadn't deleted it. The tweet of her when she asked me for a job. Yeah. It's like, so am I being held? Should I be held liable for all your activities too? Because I told you the same thing as I told him. Yeah.
But a major window into Zoe's outrageous claims was opened when it was revealed that Zoe Quinn had previously posed as a nude model for adult websites. Photographer Mallory Nasrallah recalled working with Zoe, who at the time was known as Locke Valentine.
I was living in New Hampshire at the time and working for a number of alt porn websites. They did softcore porn. Most people are familiar with Suicide Girls. It was that sort of content, though I never worked for Suicide Girls. 2 of the websites I worked for had contracted Zoe, or who I knew as Locke, as a model, and we expressed a desire to work with each other to the company and set up a date to shoot. I thought she was a beautiful model, and I was really looking forward to it. So I drove from New Hampshire to Albany, New York. We had planned to do 3 photo shoots. She had mentioned having access to a junkyard, which sounded fun to do a punky thing in. Before we even shot, she told me about the guy she killed, which was pretty interesting. The fact that she had either been fired from or quit her job 2 days before that, and that was causing her stress in her life, came up because as she was taking the trash out that night, 3 men who were her co-workers tried to arrange some sort of sex exchange. She had said that she had been a stripper or working at a strip club before that, and a guy had licked her nipple, and she had broken his eye socket with a glass ashtray, I think was the story. So, yeah, she included in these stories the fact that a man had abducted her in his van, the way that people do, and had a knife to her throat, which she somehow got away from him and plunged into his eye socket, whereupon she dashed out the back of the van and ran away, never to tell the tale to the police. But she said that the police wouldn't believe her or that they'd book her for murder, so she just didn't contact them. Yeah. So
do you think there was any truth in what she was?
No.
Okay.
No. It was always a story of the person who was either the most unlucky human being alive, or who had a problem with lying and was really trying to impress me or her boyfriend or create an image. I don't know what her goal in sharing that with me was, but I had to choose between this person is making this up for reasons unknown to me, or this person has the worst luck in the world. Apparently the job before the pizza job, also there was some kind of sexual threat involved in it. She said she beat up a hobo. She said she beat up a legless man. She told me about a lady in line behind her at the grocery store that she threatened, and told me the lovely story of when she was seduced by someone with icky fake boobs, and it was a secret trick because fake boobs are a trap. So she was very, apparently this lady had lovely breasts, and when she grabbed them, she discovered they were fake, and it was disgusting, and she told the woman she was gross and ran away. That's the general vibe of her stories, is I encounter someone and then it ends really badly in a ridiculous fashion. When I finally realized it was her, that the woman I knew as Locke was Zoe Quinn, I decided I had to say something because this was just so obviously the exact same thing. And nobody had any reason that they could present to challenge it. And it seemed to me to be something that needed to be challenged. It hadn't been more than a week since I returned to New Hampshire, where I was living at the time, and sent her these images. And she said that her roommate, the one who had done the body paint, and actually the one who had gotten us onto the location of the second shoot, and who was nothing but helpful and normal and just a delightful lady, was a psycho cunt. Those are her words, not mine.
Okay.
And we couldn't use the images because her roommate had helped create them.
Okay.
Many months later, the roommate got in touch with me and explained to me that it was all a fabrication and that Zoe couldn't pay rent and had made a huge mess.
When news of Zoe's past in the adult industry surfaced, images from her various photo shoots were passed around and discussed at length on various internet forums, which Zoe claimed made her a victim of revenge porn. But revenge porn is when private nude pictures are leaked to the internet to shame somebody, not when a person seeks out employment in the adult industry and consents to be photographed.
The claim is floating around that the nude images of her were fabricated and meant to shame her. And she seems to have taken up this mantra, like, shame on these people for sharing these images around. And that does strike me as just complete bullshit. because she was proud of these at one point. This was her career at one point. She had friendships with models who have the same sorts of images out there. There are websites still live and active right now where she's listed as a contributing model. So it seems really strange to me that she would hide behind the idea that these are something she should feel ashamed of, and that people are using them to victimize her when she freely participated and gave them out to the internet for this purpose. That was what she wanted to be doing. So that one I will say is just bullshit and deliberate self-victimization. I really resent the idea that being nude online when you've done so voluntarily in any way makes you a victim or is negative. And I do wish she had just owned it. Said, I did that, and I'm proud of it, and that was my career for a while. And I learned a lot and met a lot of nice people. There are so many better ways to handle that than hiding behind somebody's nakedness, it's bad, and they're trying to shame me. No, that's something you feel yourself, and you shouldn't, because this is a fine community to participate in. It is really important to remember we both worked for these websites. You have to apply. You definitely go through your images before they're submitted. Certainly my models can nix an entire set, which she did with my images, but this is in no way hacking. It doesn't involve hacking. You have to actively seek out a company like Deviant Nation, the one she and I both work for, and apply to model for them. It's a really rigorous process, and there's no way you don't know these images are being taken of you.
The advocates for social justice that rallied to the defense of Quinn and Sarkeesian came to be known as social justice warriors. But what does that expression mean?
It's someone who believes in equality, but is so insecure in their beliefs that they seek to destroy anyone who questions that belief. These people won't seem to rest until every fire is stamped out, and everyone who thinks differently is either dead or thinking like they are. And it's, to me, the word warriors has a special resonance because I first heard the term cell warrior. And these were the guys in prison who were in protective custody because they were either notorious gang members or child molesters. And they were called that because they were in the tier below you, and they were PC, protective custody. They talked shit all day and night because you couldn't get to them and strangle them. And a lot of these people are really brave online because there really are no repercussions, especially when you're doing it anonymously. So I think the warrior, I think it makes them sound more formidable and threatening than they are. Generally, they're cowards. It's funny, I think Eric Hoffer was considered a member of the Frankfurt School of Social Research. I'm not sure about that, but he wrote a book called The True Believer. It was about the psychology of mass movements. One of the theories that he had was that people who join social justice movements hate themselves individually and want to just erase that and obscure their own identity by blending into this sea of people. And they feel safe within this ocean or this mass movement. And that's why I find typically the more socially oriented someone is, the less of an individual they are. It's not a zero-sum game, but I think there is a spectrum there. There's a strong correlation. The more you're concerned about your team or society, less interesting I find you as an individual. And individuals, they come in all stripes, colors, weights, genders. Leftism at base is based on an emotional premise that justice comes from equality and any disparities in outcome or wealth or intelligence are the result of injustice. It's a fraudulent premise. It's patently fraudulent. I don't know if people, what bugs me sometimes is people who seem otherwise intelligent believe in it, but it seems like they're driven mostly by emotion.
As tensions mounted, Gamergaters began to catalog the sites with a social justice agenda. Sites like Vox, Polygon, Ars Technica, Rock Paper Shotgun, and others. But outstanding among them were Kotaku and Jezebel, sites that fell under the banner of Gawker Media, a company with a penchant for socially conscious yellow journalism.
Gawker Media is the Southern Poverty Law Center for snarky, pasty, underfed, geeky white people who think they're edgy. You look at these Max Reeds and these Sam Biddles and Hamilton Nolans, they're the geekiest.
Yeah.
People who were probably bullied in grade school and high school. One thing I've noticed in modern leftism, supposedly it's based on humanity and compassion, or at least a long time ago it was based on live and let live and tolerance, and not dehumanizing people and not making another. All they ever talk about is you subhuman, bigoted scum piece of shit that needs to die and rot in hell forever.
Yeah.
So where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, from Christians when I was a kid. They got enough power that they started acting like assholes. I mean, I think power, they have, history and power organisms have a life cycle. They're ascendant, if not dominant now.
Yeah.
So they become ruthless and totalitarian, want to snuff out all dissent. I mean, when I was a kid, if you were a communist or a homosexual, then you'd lose your career.
Yeah.
Now communists and homosexuals are in power and are seeking to destroy the career of anyone who's not down with their agenda. They act like they're protecting others. They're shielding themselves from ideas that they're afraid might be correct.
Yeah.
And I try not to guess at other people's motivations, but examining their behavior, when they don't ever want to engage or discuss, they just want to throw epithets.
Yeah.
To me, that signals that they're insecure. You never see two sides of the horse like, hey, we're the evil side.
Yeah.
Everyone always thinks they're good.
Right.
And is self-justifying. Basically, evil, as far as I can determine, is anything that threatens your survival.
Yeah.
It's seen as evil. These people are absolutely motivated by hatred for what they perceive as Western civilization.
Yes.
Crimes throughout the century. As if Genghis Khan never existed, the Moors, Hannibal, as if every culture wasn't ethnocentric throughout history and didn't prey. Any culture that didn't prey upon others didn't survive.
Right.
I think societies are generally stupid.
Yeah.
And I think I've always said wherever the crowd is at any given time, they got there too late and they got there for the wrong reasons. I don't have faith in social structures in general. And it was Nietzsche that said madness is rare in individuals with the rule in crowds.
Yes, absolutely.
I think what's concerning is this Orwellian idea of hate speech and these lynch mobs who try to destroy your career and your life because all you do is think differently from them.
By the time Gamergate was well underway, the social justice tech sites had developed a reputation for carrying out clickbait fatwas against their chosen targets. Brad Wardell recalled their severely slanted coverage of a bogus sexual harassment claim against him some years prior.
Sure, and I don't want to be saying anything negative about. She was a high-performing employee. I had a great deal of respect for her. The issue is that she was very young, and she had got some pretty bad advice, in my opinion, from people. And every time someone gets mad at their boss, you always have that friend that says, you should sue them. And sometimes people take that on. In my mind, and I've talked about this before, oftentimes the issue is that the journalist has an issue that they want to propagate, right? And what they do is they go out and they find. We saw this most recently in the Virginia Tech thing, right? She already had a story. She was looking for stuff. So in this case, we had a young lady who was angry because first of all, I will never claim to be Mr. Nice. I can be a very difficult person to work with. I will be the first to tell you that I am not an easy person to work with, especially when we're really busy. And it doesn't help that if it's not sexism, it's more like ageism. I'm in my 40s. I have very little patience with people in their early 20s who have come in with what I consider to be an entitlement complex. In that case, there was really nothing. There was nothing to the original case. And what got the whole thing in trouble, besides the fact with the issue of who went down the hard drive, was that people on Twitter can say a lot of outrageous things. But when you go into a court of law and you have said a bunch of things that you've recanted under testimony, that is bad. And so that ultimately the case was dismissed with prejudice, and she had to write an apology letter. And that was, and again, this should not be used about her at all. The issue here is that the media chose to make this an issue. They decided to use her and myself, who would have been, I would suspect we both would have preferred none of this to have blown up, as props to pursue a activist journalist agenda. What happened is, and this is the business model of the game industry, which is distinct for tech, and there's a couple of things that need to lay the groundwork for this. And that is, I've actually seen people argue that Kotaku should have covered the lawsuit because it was a lawsuit and it was newsworthy. But that's nonsense. That's idiotic, first of all. Because most game sites did not cover it. Yeah. There's in fact, one can actually look at the sites that chose to cover it and the ones that didn't. And then fast forward a couple of years, and it's very clear which ones covered it and which ones didn't, and where their public positions on all this Gamergate stuff is. But the other thing is that in 2012, Startup was like a 80% software company. Mm-hmm. Not a single tech magazine covered it because it's not newsworthy. It had nothing to do with customers. It had nothing. And people who've been out there know that frivolous lawsuits against wealthy people happen all the time. They could have at least, I don't know, gotten the other side. And then I would have people saying to me, well, you shouldn't talk because it's an ongoing case. But it's like, well, you talk to the other side at length.
Yeah. On August 28th, 2014, a series of articles from prominent social justice games journalists appeared on the websites Gamasutra, Kotaku, Polygon, BuzzFeed, The Daily Beast, and The Financial Post, with VG247, Ars Technica, Vice, Games on Net, Destructoid, The Guardian, and Rock Paper Shotgun following suit in the days ahead. The articles were all interconnected in style and in subject matter, declaring that gamers did not actually care about games journalism. Really, they were just mad because the gamer identity was over. Going forward, the industry would be concerning itself with more important social concerns. Outstanding among the articles was the tersely mean-spirited Leigh Alexander's screed, "Gamers don't have to be your audience, gamers are over," which provided the article blitz with its most infamous quote, "Gamer isn't just a dated demographic label that most people prefer not to use. Gamers are over, that's why they're so mad. These obtuse shit-slingers, these wailing hyper-consumers, these childish internet arguers, they are not my audience. They don't have to be yours. There is no side to be on. There is no debate to be had. There is what's past and there is what's now. There is the role you can choose to play in what's ahead." The articles would become known as the Gamers Are Dead articles. For the burgeoning Gamergate movement, the articles stank of collusion, a fear confirmed when the Game Journo Pros email list was leaked. The email list was a who's who of social justice gaming journalists and proof of their collusion to craft and push a common narrative. Mailing list creator Kyle Orland was found to be leading a discussion on how to handle the Zoe Quinn controversy, saying, "I'm not even going to give the bullshit journalism ethics excuse for these attacks the time of day. Maybe we should just use this as an excuse to give more attention to her work. I know I've been meaning to review Depression Quest since its Steam release." All of the major players were there. Writers from Polygon, Ars Technica, Kotaku, Vice, Destructoid, and even the Associated Press, CNBC, and USA Today had an interest in being in on the social justice and gaming narrative. The only question that remained was, why?
Okay, I have to leave now soon, so I will stop the streaming here. I suppose I will do another again someday. So support me on Patreon if you want to see exclusive drawings and rewards. And my website is kukurullo.com. And goodbye.